Recording in progress. Welcome everyone to our IQ study group. Our focus today is helping you get certified for the MuleSoft developer certification, commonly known as
No,
MCD1.
no, that's what it used to commonly be known as.
Oh, that's right.
I'm
Well,
looking it up. Go ahead.
all right, yeah, it's now called Salesforce. Yeah, you better find it out because it is different. A lot of things have changed. So we're going to cover some of those changes immediately, the name of it. But when I went there, Ryan, and looked at the current certification of this, it was still this icon and this developer, this name. But the names did change.
It
Ryan,
doesn't even have an acronym anymore. I'll read it when we get to that part. Go ahead.
okay.
I'm looking at it.
All right, sounds great. So welcome everyone. We appreciate you being here. Shayna is also with us, and she's got some hot tips to share about her experience passing this exam, things as well as, once you're certified and then you enter the real world of using what you've learned. I know myself when I went through that transition, I'm like, oh, well, the academia doesn't quite match what maybe we needed to do in the real world. And every location is going to have some different requirements and different deployment model. You might be all in the cloud, you might be on-prem. So some of the things you learn as a developer may need to take those things into consideration. So anyway, she's going to share some tips with us on that. So here's our agenda. Ryan's going to go over, he recently took the exam again with the web assessor, and he's got some things to share. You see the plus rest there? He'll tell you why that's there. Shayna's going to share her study tips and advice, and I've got a few practice questions for you, and then we'll have some Q&A. But we also want to remember the code of conduct. You've seen that, or code of conduct. You have seen this before in some of our other study groups, and one of the presenters shared it as a rule of thumb, and we've adopted it as our IQ code of conduct. If your mom and dad would have told you not to do it, don't do it in this meeting. Okay. We just want that to be clear. But we're happy you're here. Whether you're here in person with us now or if you're watching the video later, that we're here for you. We want to help you achieve your goals. We're pretty excited that our presence is growing. It's a passion of ours, and seeing that come to life is really exciting. So, that you can reach out to us and give us a topic you want us to cover. I did have a request to see if we would be doing MCIA soon. So we'll get that on our agenda. Yeah, Ryan, go ahead.
I just want to add something to the code of conduct because we've been recently helping, both of us have, in different capacities, different conferences get set up with their code of conducts. And part of what I would like to add, we haven't put it on the slide yet though, is I think it's important when you have a code of conduct to have like a way, if you're not comfortable with something, so if you just we would take Diane or me or Victoria, any one of us, that way if you're uncomfortable with me, you can tell Diane. If you're uncomfortable with Diane, you can tell me, right? But you can make personal contact with us on LinkedIn, in the chat as a direct message, just because part of it is that we want this to be an environment where we had an experience once or twice where it might make people uncomfortable, and we don't want that. So that right. Just, you can report it to us and we will do something about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. Well, while you've got the floor, Ryan, guess what's up first?
I don't know. What? Oh.
All you.
All right. Well, I can definitely start.
I'm going to stop sharing. You want to share your screen and show?
Okay. Sure. Sure. Yeah, this is not class, so I don't have curriculum to share with you guys like we normally do in our actual classes. Let me get rid of some of my code. Obviously, I've been doing a lot of that. Let's see. All right. Okay, good. Now we have a nice, AI generated landscape. Let's start with this. It's not called MCD1 anymore. It's now Salesforce Certified MuleSoft Developer 1. But it's the same thing. And if you had it at the right time, it does roll over. So Salesforce says it's the same thing. And now that doesn't expire anymore. So if you get your MCD1, there's a little thing on here about how to have continuing education. Once you get the certification, they're just starting to announce this. They're saying it doesn't require maintenance in 2024. More information will be shared in 2025. But then there's this intriguing little table here. and I don't know what it means, but we can look at it and try to figure that out. So it seems like Salesforce is sharing something about maintenance schedules with us, and that to me looks like a clue. Like there is a Salesforce, so MuleSoft certifications used to be their own thing. For anybody here who is not is brand new to it, don't worry, because now it's not different. Now it's the same as Salesforce certifications. But for those of us who've been around MuleSoft for a while, it is a big change. So we keep talking about what's different about it. So give us a little grace. But it really MuleSoft certifications are now Salesforce certifications, and there's you can kind of see this schedule here. The way Salesforce seems to do it is after you have a certification, there's modules you have to complete in Trailhead by a certain date to keep your certification active. So that's probably what they're implying here with the little table. That they're having, they're not saying for sure. They're saying more information will be shared in 2025, but then they kind of show you how they do all their other ones. And that's probably what we can expect is sometime in 2025, we're all going to have to go do modules on Trailhead to keep our certifications active. So make sure you have a Trailblazer account. You can follow me, and if you've been in our study group, I will follow you back because I like to stay connected to all of our community. So come friend me on Trailblazer, friend each other on Trailblazer. Part of the nice part about our community is that we support each other and stay connected to each other. And who knows, somebody that you meet in a study group might go to a new job and then invite you to go with them, or the other way around. So that's part of staying connected to the community, right? Or maybe you'll find someone you want to bring onto your team, that kind of thing. So I like to stay connected with people. So anyway, this is now our study group for the Salesforce certified MuleSoft Developer 1. So luckily, I kind of knew this was coming in January, February, and my certification was expired. So I didn't renew it on the old system. I waited, and I signed up for this on the new system, which was like May when they switched over. So now it's June 14th, right? So for the recording, this is being recorded about a month after that. And I went through the experience, and some of the things I guess I could share with you guys. Just about actually, I'll save it for the end because Shayna's going to do something else about test prep. So I'm going to do some test prep stuff at the very end. Something else I noticed is the content. There's an exam guide, and you can do this for all the exams. You go through the exam guide. Something that MuleSoft has added they didn't have before is when you look at the exam guide, there's an outline and it tells you percentages of which categories of questions have more questions and less questions. So it can kind of help you prioritize your studying. You go through these sections and then look at them. And I noticed, where is it? I noticed when I was taking it, I hadn't come back and looked at this. I was a little bit overconfident. I was actually not overconfident, but I was very confident, so I didn't come review this when I did it. But anyway, I noticed that this section is super is a lot more than I expected. Go ahead, Diane, what's up?
Would you throw that link in the chat?
Yeah, the exam guide.
Yeah.
I want everybody to get comfortable just navigating the Salesforce certifications thing too. So, make sure if you're not sure about it, all you got to do is go to credentials, certifications, and the Trailhead menu and find your way here always. That's always how you do it. And this is the direct one to this class, Salesforce certified MuleSoft developer 1. So I took it. I did not get a 100%. So, but I definitely passed it with a high score, but not that. I missed a couple, and I don't know which ones because they don't show you which ones. And at the end, I'll tell you about the whole test taking experience because it's not identical to what it used to be on the MuleSoft exams. But yeah, I noticed that this HTTP protocol and non-MuleSoft REST type of questions, I was getting a lot of points because I knew that stuff. And it occurred to me that, in the class, in the MuleSoft provides a class related to this, fundamentals class. And even in the IQ class before this happened, we didn't have a lot of actual material in either one, the MuleSoft official class or the integration quest. We have one called professional integration with MuleSoft. It's not the same. It's a different kind of class, but they both are good for new developers to MuleSoft in different ways. One is more product, one is more how you do the job. And both of them didn't talk about REST, or at least a little bit. It was just, just talk a little bit about REST. So I figured on our group, I can do kind of a review. Plus, I think you can, if you go way back, this is so funny. Before I ever found MuleSoft, I'm going to go to my profile. I think it's in here. If I go way back, let's see, where's my, what are these? It's like documents. Somewhere in here, you can see these slide share things that I presented. So you see these like 2014. There was a REST presentation I did so long ago. I can't find it in here. I have to go hunting. Anyway, I'm not going to show it to you now because but I mean, it was seriously more than 10 years ago. I was doing like REST stuff like that long ago. And it was worth studying because it's not a MuleSoft only thing. It's like, that's why MuleSoft is good. It's the other way around. It's like MuleSoft is good because it does REST, not REST is useful because it's in MuleSoft, right? So, so I don't know if anybody want to put in the chat, what do you think that stands for? REST, REST. Let's have a race. Who's first? I'll give you 1 point. So
What about Fieldings? What is the dysentery that he did?
Don't
Share
say
that.
I will, but I want to before
yeah. Wait, for sure.
What's the answer? What does REST? What the question is? What does REST stand for? You can Google it. There's no cheating in software.
And it doesn't mean it's time to take a nap.
Nope, that's close though. Whitney's on the right track. That's a good clue. REST, REST. REST. Because there's REST and there's HTTP, and you probably hear them talked about together a lot, right? So I'll give you a hint. HTTP, that's the protocol part. REST doesn't have a protocol, and it's not about a protocol. Representational state transfer. Yeah, and it's totally fine to look it up. So the E doesn't have a word. So Whitney gets 1 point for Whitney. Nope, that's Shayna. Whitney doesn't get the point. I take it back and I give it to Shayna. Shayna gets 1 point. She got it. Representational state transfer. It's a design, it's an architectural style. So it turns out it's in the certification. So we're going to do a little bit of REST. Now, REST and HTTP are related because, like Diane said about Roy Fielding, I don't want to make this, it's not too much on the exam, but if you want to look it up, I'll give you a link to it. There's a paper called Architectural Styles and the Design of Network-Based Software Architectures, came out in the year 2000, and chapter 6 or chapter 5 is REST. This is where it was named that. It's like it's a method for designing distributed systems. And what are we doing in integration? We're making distributed systems, right? We're tying this system to that system. What are we doing with Mule, right? Go get some data, put it over here. So it turns out REST is a very useful way, a very powerful way to design distributed systems that last for decades. That's kind of Roy's thing. Roy Fielding, the guy who wrote this, is part of what he's up to or has been up to for decades now is making software. You don't want to have to come back and fix it. You have like and some of you probably have some appliances like that. Like you get a stove, you get a fridge. If you buy the right one, how long does it last? Right? If you buy the wrong one, how long does it last? And I don't want to make software that's like or furniture, right? You get that cheap like press board nightstand and you put it by you go to Target, it's like $26. You're like, all right, I got a nightstand. You put it by your bed. I did that. And what happened like 2 years later? Like you got to move, or you just move it from one room to another room in your house. And it like sits like this. Right? It's like there's things, how well are things built? REST is a way, it's a actionable, useful, like practical way to build distributed systems that don't fall over and they last for decades, right? So that's really what Roy's up to. So what does that have to do with HTTP? Roy helped make HTTP. So if you go there, that's the protocol we're going to study today. Here it is. There's his name at the top of the RFC, right? Along with Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who made the web in the first place, and a bunch of other people from big companies. And Roy was like trying to make sure that the big companies didn't put their little, toll fee on the information superhighway. He didn't, that was kind of what he was trying to do, is make the protocol good for everybody. So anyway, it makes open standards. So HTTP is what we are going to look at because MuleSoft put that on the exam that I took 2 weeks ago. And I was surprised to find so much HTTP stuff. on the exam because I thought it was all going to be flows and variables and batch and scatter gathers, and no, it wasn't. It had, well, it was, but there was a good few, at least the one I took. It's a randomized question thing, right? But there was definitely plenty on it. And if I look through this, like I have to kind of dig to see why they would do that, right? But I'm glad that they did that because that's what the tools are for. That's why we do Ramo. That's why we do API Kit. That's why we have um that's why we're ending up with JSON so much. So because the protocol is so, if you kind of look through, there's REST here, REST here, REST here. Maybe that's why they put so much REST on the exam. So I'm going to do a couple of basics, and I'm going to start with URLs. So I'm going to do what I used to do. I used to teach REST in the MuleSoft classes before we had an official curriculum. And because we didn't have one, I had to do what I'm doing now because I didn't take time to make slides before the class. So what I would do is a big text document. Okay. REST mean one of the principles of REST is uniform interface. Uniform. Yeah, you probably see that word in HTTP all the time, right? Uniform interface. You probably see that in software a lot, right? Uniform, like you wear a uniform to work. Anybody have to wear a uniform to work? Yeah, no. You guys wear, none of us have to wear uniforms to work anymore. You did?
Well,
John
we, Janavi did, we should wear our muley outfits, but you know, maybe not to work every day.
our Trailblazer hoodies. Yeah. Oh, you guys can't see it. Here we go. He's wearing a Trailblazer hoodie. See? He's in uniform. A uniform is the same, right? Uniform is, and it looks the same. It's not like every other, you don't actually all look exactly the same, but something is the same about everybody who are in a uniform. So there's a uniform interface to HTTP. Now I did some integrations before there was HTTP, or there was, but we didn't, back in like the late 90s, we didn't use HTTP as much. It was like you could try it and see if you want to do that, or you could try this other thing. You just have a TCP socket. You could just put a file somewhere. Like there wasn't as much agreement in the culture of software to use HTTP for everything, right? But when they built HTTP, they were trying to design something. So one of the design principles of HTTP is uniform interface. What's an interface, right? What an interface is how you use a piece of software. Okay, so part of the HTTP uniform interface is when you have a system send a message to another system, there's rules about it, right? If I send a file to you, I could send any file I want to you, right? And you could answer me or you could not answer me. Like, so there's some of these rules to HTTP that fit the RESTful design principles uniform interface. One of them is that every message exchange is synchronous. So let's raise your hand or unmute or put in the chat. What's synchronous about HTTP? What makes it synchronous? When you see that word, if you see it on your test, what are you going to think synchronous is?
Take a guess. Take a guess. Oh, there we go. Janavi.
Good. It's a phone call. It's request reply. It's a little. So a phone call is all, yeah, they're both synchronous. That's actually really good. I'll take both of those. So both a phone call and a request reply pattern are both synchronous because there's two parties and they have to send messages to each other, right? So if I want to do something with you, I pick up the phone, I dial the number, you say hello, and then I say hi, and then you say, who's this? And I say, don't you know who this is? And you say, no, hang up the phone. There's like a back and forth of like you wait for the other party and then you say something and then they say something. Now, a phone call is synchronous, but it is not stateless. It is stateful, right? Because there's a back and a forth of the conversation. So I call you, you say hello, back and forth and back and forth. Sometimes we would log into systems on the command line like that. Like I with FTP, it's synchronous, but FTP is not is stateful, right? HTTP is stateless. So HTTP, which is hypertext, and we don't have time for hypertext. That'll be a longer lesson. It's a really interesting one, but it's not today's lesson. Hypertext transfer protocol is synchronous and it's stateless because we don't go back and forth, right? I connect to a system. Let's do it here. I telnet to google.com. So I'm using a low level protocol called telnet, right? It's sitting there waiting for me. It didn't say hello. Like I called Google, but it didn't say anything. It's just sitting there. And I put get index.html, HTTP 1.0, and it answers me and it's over. So I send a request. It sends a response back to me. That's the end, right? The conversation is only two words or two sentences, right? So that's part of the constraint, the uniform interface of HTTP is it's all that way, all back, over, right? Many internet protocols do not have those rules. If you connect to a database, it doesn't have those rules. If you connect to a JMS broker, it doesn't have those rules. FTP doesn't have those rules. HTTP does have those rules. Now there's versions of HTTP. HTTP has 1.0, 2.0. Some of those rules change as you go to 2.0. We're going to focus on 1.0 because guess what the MuleSoft developer exam focuses on? 1.0, which is fine because it's the oldest one. All right, so synchronous, stateless, and then it's what are you going to say? Right? So with I used another protocol that was similar to HTTP, but it was a competitor in like 2001 called XML RPC. So RPC will give you a hint. It means remote procedure call. It was synchronous and it was stateless, but it did not have uniform this distinction that HTTP makes, where you have method, that you have the method, and then you have the resource. There's two parts of your request that the client sends the server. So client sends the server a method and a resource. Let's see who can get, I'll give you 1 point for every standard HTTP method you can put in the chat. There's a standard list of HTTP methods. And there's not, you can't just make up anything. I mean, you can, it would be compatible, but it wouldn't be part of the core protocol. So you probably know some HTTP methods. I'm gonna give 1 point each. Shayna's got 1 point right now. She's in the lead. HTTP methods. I'm gonna write them as you say them. Method, and 2, a resource, and then 3, a body. Well, 4 headers, but oh, Janavi got a bunch of points. Get, that is 1. Yeah, 1 point for Janavi. Post, put, delete, that's 4. She's got a lot of points. Head, options, that's 6 points for Janavi. 1 point for Alan, that's right, Patch. That's another one. So there's a standard list of methods. If we go to the RFC, they're in here, right? And you go to that's part of the uniform interface of HTTP. Where's it at? Message, HTTP message, request method. Let's see how many we got. We got options, we got head, we got get, we got post, put, delete. Nobody got trace and nobody got connect. And patch is part of HTTP. I'm looking at 2616, which is an older RFC. So that is definitely still in there. There's an extension to HTTP called WebDAV. I think that's versioning is the V. I don't know what the rest of it stands for. 1 point for anybody who can put what that actually means in the chat. WebDAV. It's an HTTP compatible enhancement. So you can extend these. You can make extension methods. That's part of the definition of the protocol. But it's a fixed list of what the action is for the request. It has to be one of these things. With XML RPC and also with SOAP, you could just make up anything. You could put approve expense report, right? You could put, close account. You could put continue session. You could put whatever in there, and the code on the other side would interpret it and do something, right? With HTTP, we made a 2-part thing where the first part, the action, is a fixed list, and that's useful because we get guarantees of the backend software. So some of these are safe and some of these are idempotent. And I'm going to give you that on here too. So some methods are safe, right? And then of the rest of them that are not safe, some unsafe methods are idempotent. And that's a useful word to go look up. But that's basically repeatable. You can do it if it succeeds twice, it's the same thing as succeeding once. If it succeeds 100 times, it's the same thing as succeeding once. Like if you delete a file on your hard drive, you could delete it and then delete it again and delete it again. It's gone, right? It's not breaking anything to keep deleting the same file, right? That's idempotent. So some HTTP methods are like that. So the guarantee, and when you design a RAML, you're supposed to make it that way, where if you use the safe methods don't change anything. That's what's safe about them. So if the nice thing about these are they can succeed 0, 1, or many times. With a idempotent, it can succeed 1 or many times, but 0 is different, right? Because if I never delete the file, it'll still be there, right? But if I delete it once or many times, it'll be gone, right? With safe methods, let's say I'm reading a file. If I read it 0 times, 1 times, or many times, and the server will be unchanged, right? That's really what it's about, because we're trying to make sure we don't mess up the server. Will be the same, right? Either way, the server is the same, right? So that's the difference. So safe and idempotent methods is something you want to study on. There's a little list of them. There's a summary we could build together. We should probably make like a little D-zone ref card for IQ for this stuff. So that's all in the RFC. And then the resource is going to be part of a URL. So let's give another point here. I hope somebody's keeping track. I'm going to keep track. I got one for Shayna. I got one.
Doesn't she have 2? She got the very first point you said.
Yeah, but that's all she got.
So that's 2. No. I mean something else. Representative state transfer. She got that 1, and then she got also one of the methods. So she has 2.
So Alan got one of the methods.
Alan got 1, yeah, and Janavi cracked it up with 6.
Yeah, and Janavi's got the lead. All right, I'm writing them down. But if somebody else wants to keep track, keep me honest. Yeah,
she's here for the vibes. You get points.
Yeah, good.
You get points for that, even. No, I'm sorry.
I was about to give another point. What was it for? Oh, URL. What does that stand for? The URL is very core to what HTTP is all about. I gotta hide that.
Go, Alan.
Uniform Resource Locator. A Uniform Resource Locator is a special kind of URI, Uniform Resource Identifier. And right? So that's what this is. So good. So we've got HTTP is based on, I gotta give Alan another point here. Let me put there. Done. And the Uniform Resource Locator is something I got questions on when I took the exam. So maybe you will too. Right, so let's do a little Uniform Resource Locator quiz. So that's what identifies the resource in the request. That's the R, a URL, Uniform Resource Locator, that's what the resource part of the request is. A resource is something, so there's a noun and a verb, right? There's a method that does something, and there's a resource that it gets done to. That's the object of the sentence, right? The action and the object. So Uniform Resource Locator has parts, right? There's going to be a part up here, HTTP, right? Or HTTPS, right? Then : / you've probably seen those before, right? And then there's going to be potentially some prefix stuff that I will talk about. And then there's going to be a host name, right? On the URL. And then there's the host name is going to be followed by a path, right? And the path can be followed by a query string. So let's dig into that query string. So the query string can have query parameters. And how do I know where the path ends and the query string starts? Put that in the chat. There's a way to tell in an HTTP in a URL. Where's the path ending? Is that a question, Janavi? Janavi got it. It's a question mark. The path is going to be separated from the query string by a question mark. Now that's not required. You don't have to have a question mark. But if you don't have one, there's no query string. That's how the system knows that the request has a query string. There's a question mark in there. Good. Now the query string can be made up of a bunch of key value pairs. Okay, so that's at the end. Let's dig backwards and then we'll come back to the query string again. So the beginning part, what's that called? At the beginning before the colon. Nope. That is a protocol, but that's not what that part of the URL is called. This one denotes a protocol because remember, you can have like file : / right? You can have class path : / You've probably seen URLs like this before, right? FTP, that's more like a protocol. This part has a fancy name that you're going to remember. You can write it in your notes. Going once. Going twice. I guess I didn't ask you in a Googleable way. I like for people to be able to Google. Or Bing, or whatever other search engine. You can chat GPT it. All right, that part is called the scheme. Of the URL. It's the scheme, and it could denote a protocol or something else. It's a URL now because the scheme is meaningful. Because we need a way to locate where to send this request from the client side. Like before the request goes out to the world, you got to know where to go. Because ClassPath doesn't even go out to the world, does it? It goes in RAM somewhere. The file, it stays on this computer. It looks on this computer's hard drive, right? So the scheme is meaningful in HTTP. It tells the client program, how am I going to go out and do this and access this resource, right? So you don't actually send a network request for those. Only some URLs have network requests. And you're going to notice in HTTP, there's no scheme. Watch. Get. There's no host name. All I send is the path part, /index.html, question, query, param equals AB123, right? I don't send the host name. I don't send the scheme. None of that. That's not in the actual request data that gets sent across. See, and it comes back. So that's what the client program has to take the URL apart. The browser or the curl or the advanced REST client or the Postman has to interpret the URL, not the server. Okay, so it uses the scheme to decide how am I going to go send this out, and then it has to use the host name and the prefix for knowing where to send it, right? So if it's a file, that'll be a path on my hard drive. If it's a class path, it'll be somewhere in RAM in the JVM. If it's FTP, might be, so there's the host name and prefix that says what computer I want to talk to in HTTP, and then all these other protocols or something else. So URL and HTTP intersect at the scheme. That's where some URLs are for HTTP, some URLs are not for HTTP. It's from the scheme. So I'm going to delete those because I want to do HTTP with you guys today. So goodbye. We're just going to do HTTP. So when you're doing HTTP or HTTPS, what's the difference? This will be a point. What's the S mean? Secure, SSL. I'm going to give... I think Whitney's technically more accurate as a lawyer would say it, because that's what it stands for, HTTP secure. But I think underneath the protocol, it's not actually called SSL anymore. There you go, Whitney. TLS. TLS is the modern, now 2024. It's TLS. It didn't used to be though, so I can't take Janavi's point away. Give them both a point. You both get a point. I got to give Whitney 2 though, because she got the S and the TLS part. So you get 2 points.
You're a generous point giver.
I am. I don't know. Do we have enough points in the bank for all these points I'm giving?
Oh, wait, we have some points in the bank.
Okay. Well, I guess I have plenty left. All right, good.
Yeah.
All right. So that's so we've got this. The scheme gives you 2 different protocols. Now, the nice thing about secure or not secure is once the connection is made, TLS stands for transport layer security. HTTP sits at layer 7, application layer of OSI model, right? Then there's layer 6, which we don't need to talk about right now. Then there's the transport layer, which is layer 5. I think 6 is the session layer. So I think that's actually where this is session. And then this is transport. But I don't think we care about session. I'm just remembering because I forgot. You guys can look it up. This is the OSI network model. So networking has one way to do networking that's very old and all the different vendors use it. OSI is a standards body. They have a network model, presentation layer. Thanks, Diane. Yes. We don't need to care about it for TLS though. Transport layer is layer 5, right? This is layer 5 and it has TLS on it, right? 4 is what? Oh, 5 is session, isn't it? Yeah, thank you, Janavi. 1 point for getting me fixed. This is the session layer. Yeah, good. Session layer of the OSI model. So session layer 5. So you establish a session at the transport layer using transport layer security, TLS, and then the higher layers don't care. They're going to work with TLS. They're going to work without TLS. Either way, you're still going to have this same get slash index.html, right? Because underneath you're doing the encryption. So as far as the program's concerned, maybe it does encryption, maybe it doesn't. It's been abstracted at a lower layer of the OSI model. So HTTP is defined at the application layer way up here. It's the words and the letters and the characters that go out and come back across the connection, across the session that's been established. So good. So we have a path that's after the host name. And then there's a query string in the path. Now, RAML more than HTTP has defined this special kind of parameter. So if we want to design a RESTful interface, sometimes you want to define inputs and you want to define outputs, right? And we're going to go through the different kind of inputs you could. Well, let's say, what are the ways if I want to design a interface, a resource, a flow in Mule that's going to have a RESTful interface? What are the ways that my client can send me input? Give me any way you can think of. I'll give you a point for each one. So what are some different inputs you can have?
While you're waiting on those answers to come through, it's interesting Whitney did mention old school for the network layers, but they're still in use today. So some of the old school stuff is still happening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the
I have to not give Whitney any points for those because I'm not asking for the format. I'm asking for the different ways a client can give me input. So those formats, I'll give you the point, Whitney. They're contained in where? Where would I find JSON, XML, or CSV in an HTTP request? It would be in the body. Good, yeah. So one place I can get input is body, and this might be different formats, right? Like JSON, XML, CSV. MuleSoft loves those. All right. In the query, we're gonna do that's the next one is query. That's 2 points for Whitney. She's going fast. Keep going fast. In the body, you can do much more broadly compatible inputs that MuleSoft doesn't encourage all the time, but I do, and you should, which is multi-part form data. That's like the most classic one from way back on the internet. that's the way when you made a web form in HTML, it would send multi-part form data. There's multi-part mixed, and there's one more. There's the one that we use for files. Anyway, these are all identified by MIME types. MIME types. Right? So if I wanted to, Octet Stream's a good one. Yeah. So if I wanted to make an interface where I can get complex data from my customer, from my client, body is the place to put it. And I say what kind it is by providing a MIME type that the client should use. And that's what RAML is made out of, right? RAML has that, you have to put the MIME type for the request. That's what it's defining is what am I going to find in the body, right? Now the query string has query parameters, right? Query, and I'm going to call them query parameters because RAML calls them that. HTTP does not call them that, calls them something else. But for us, the query parameter is a bunch of key value pairs. And keys are optional, at least in the protocol, maybe not in your RAML spec, right? And keys may be repeated. So you can have x equals 1, x equals 2, x equals 3, and that's just fine with query parameters. All right, so query parameters, because you can, it looks like this. Let me put this one, HTTP : / my service / my resource question mark x equals 1 ampersand x equal 2, right? ampersand name equals Diane, right? So I can put a whole bunch of query parameters and I don't have to put y equals anything unless I want to, right? So if I want to make optional parameters, if I want to make repeated parameters, the query string is a good place to design those, right? That's what they look like. And then there's another kind of parameter. Yeah. Oh, someone's coming in. I got you. There we go. Good. So then there's another kind of parameter that is not in the RFC called that mute, but we do have in Ramble. Somebody want to say what that is? It looks like Whitney typed the word a bunch of times. URI parameters. I'm going to give you another point. I'm going to have to mark a bunch of these points for Whitney. There we go. Yeah. So we call it in Ramble, we call it a URI parameter, which is kind of I wish they didn't call it that exactly, because the whole thing is the URI, right? So it's kind of I wish it was called path parameters instead of URI parameters. And I don't know if anybody knows if OAS calls it or Swagger calls it that, but URI parameters are not after the question mark. They're not in the query string, right? URI parameters look like HTTP : my service, right? My service / maybe it's like / customers / some number / orders, right? So that is like a number in the middle of the path that indicates a parameter to my, I want to use that as an input to my code so it can go look it up in a database or some folder on the hard drive or something, right? So I need an input that's like, it's not fixed, it's not a constant, it's a variable type of an input. So you'll see it like this. You'll see it like with the curly braces in Mule, right? The URI param. So it's like customer ID, like that. So that's a URI parameter. So they're different from query parameters. First of all, they're required. You can't leave them out. Path parameter. OAS is better, Diane. That's the only way I've ever seen that I like OAS better than Ramble, because every other way I like Ramble better.
And you all heard it here, and it's recorded.
Hey, you got to give the opponent their due. If they do something better, they do something better. Ramble's still way better in many other ways.
Oh, yes, that is true. It's
But
like you have
way,
to define it as like the in for the path. So it's actually in the structure of the code.
like that. Yeah, and that's a more correct name because it's a parameter in the path. But Ramble calls it a URI parameter. Let me do it like this. Ramble calls it that because you do. I think OAS is in scope for MCD, at least 2, maybe 1. I have to go look that up, but or it's also called a path parameter in OAS 3 or 2 or probably both. Yeah. So it's another way to provide an input. That's not all. There's another way you can provide input. And this is going to be the end because I'm looking at our time. This is the last thing. Anybody? I'm going to do it in front of you and then you can call it out. Ready? All right. Clear. We're going to go back and telnet again. And this time I'm going to do get / index.html v1.0. Oh, it didn't answer me yet. I can put accept text HTML, right? I can put authorization, some kind of long thing, right? What am I doing here? I can put headers. Good, Janavi. Key value pairs that have colons in them. You can send headers in your HTTP request. And it doesn't answer you until you're done sending headers. See that? Good. Headers. So the last way inputs can be provided in a RESTful request is headers. And headers are not part of the identifier. Headers are meant for providing metadata for a request that is part of the exchange, part of the conversation between the client and the server, not part of the actual data. So you wouldn't use headers for anything business meaningful. You wouldn't put an order ID in a header. You might put a session ID. You might not. You might put an authorization code. You might put a format you want to use. There's one called transfer encoding where you can ask the server to compress the data before it sends it to you. So headers are for you know, technical metadata about about the request and response, and or about the session, or that it's meant to not for business information that needs to be sent or received. Now, headers are a little different than the rest because headers are not different if they're request headers or response headers. Some headers are both. Some headers are just for requests. Some headers are just for responses. So headers always have the same syntax. The keys always mean the same things. It's just some of them don't make sense in a response, or some of them don't make sense in a request. So headers are both ways. All the rest of these that we did, let me put that on here, both ways, request and response. So I'll save these notes in case we can make a little study sheet out of them or something. But I think
Yeah.
it's time to find out a little more about the way you take the exam. I'm going to do about Shayna, get ready. So let me stop sharing my screen. How do I do that? I just wanted to say that like the experience of taking the new exam on Web Assessor was less strict proctoring. I got in there and I never had to show my whole desk. I went in a special room just in case I would have to, but they didn't make me turn my camera around. They didn't make me take my phone out of my pocket. They used to do that. They make me,
Yeah.
they didn't do it.
Everything you had to like lift, show your
Yeah.
ears, show your glasses. Did they
I
make
did
you show
not.
your?
I did not even have a chat with anybody. I
Wow.
just got in there. I installed all the security software, then it was a lot. I turned on my camera and everything, and I was in the exam.
Wow.
And there was no back and forth. And then this time, which was different than when I took the last MuleSoft exam, on the left side of the screen, I had my test questions, which were pretty close to what they used to be like. So if you took one before, but it's an online multiple choice exam. And then on the right side, there was a text document. So I could do notes if I wanted.
Oh my goodness. Seriously?
Yeah, I didn't use it. I used it
That's
a little
neat.
bit, but
Because
yeah.
from question to question, you might want to jot down, oh, hey, remember this, or because sometimes the question will jog your memory. And yeah,
Yeah.
Shayna, go ahead and get your screen shared while we're chatting.
Yeah. So those are some differences to the old exam process. It was a lot
Yeah,
less, the proctoring was less intrusive, and there was a place to put notes. That was basically what I
interesting.
wanted to share.
Very nice, very nice. Well, cool. All right, Shayna. Shayna's gonna give some hot tips here. I know you shared a little bit of a testimony in the past, but all you tell us your thoughts.
Alrighty, cool. Hey everyone, my name is Shayna Evans. I was here earlier this year talking about goals and such, but now that I've had some time in the field, I wanted to come back and just share some of my experience. So as Ryan mentioned, there's been some changes to the exam structure. So honestly, just whatever he's going off of is king right now. But when I took it, I know a lot of the topics that I wanted to focus on, and I wish I would have focused more on, was the familiarization with like the XML, data weave, RAML, especially syntax. For me, even in the field now, syntax gets me all the time. Like a comma or a question mark or something would throw off your entire project. So just really paying attention to the syntax in these types of questions is really important. Like Ryan said, URLs, resources, and methods as well is something that you're really going to want to know. Also, one thing that's really helped me is identifying each of the components and the connectors that are in Anypoint Studio. I have a notebook just full of the different types of components that I use on a daily basis. And that really just helps me remember like the who, what, where, when, why, and how these components and connectors interact with each other, because you're going to need that once you get out into the quote real world, and it's easier to like define what these components are doing now. So when you're getting ready to actually go out and do your work, you'll know and you'll have an idea of what's going on. So what I did as far as like practice and preparation is really staying engaged with the MuleSoft community. As you know, LinkedIn has a huge community. There's also the meetups that happen with MuleSoft. I used to go to those really often, weekly, really. There's something happening every week. So please check that out if you can. Also, these study sessions, Integration Quest was huge in my development as a developer. So the Trailhead, I know MuleSoft has a Trailhead path for self-training. So I would do that too. I checked it out. YouTube, going on these official websites like Ramel and really getting like that background history on the why of why these components are being used really helped me. And then also Google, of course, as we all know. As far as hands-on practice, recreating your scenarios and understanding the whole picture, again, going towards that who, what, where, when, why, and how will really help you with the exam. Going in and doing those, let's see, going through the use cases that are in the training, like really taking your time to go through and figure out exactly what's going on would help you. And also just to double back, going through each of the different components that are in any point platform will really help you as well. So then you'll have a holistic understanding of what's going on. One thing that I really like to do is time management is the Pomodoro technique. For me, I do like 50 minutes and then I'll take a 10-minute break. But of course you can change that to fit your schedule. But the Pomodoro technique has really, really helped me when I was studying. And even in my work now, I use it and it really helps me stay proactive. So as far as preparation, that's really what I have for the exam. But honing all of that in to becoming like a developer and being out in the field now, I'd like to say that your learning never ends. There's always something new to learn, like every day. I'm learning every day. Different tools that I didn't even know about, like I'm getting that hands-on experience in. So it's okay to be a novice. It's okay to be new at this. There's so many different things that are interconnected with MuleSoft and that could be integrated with MuleSoft. So really just like take your time and just soak in as much as you can. But remember, it is okay to be a novice and it's okay to be new at this. Another thing that really helped me was reading some of the use cases on the MuleSoft website or even online, just to get a holistic view of how MuleSoft's being used. One thing that was really like a reality check for me coming into this new role is taking the academic part and merging it with reality. Because as you all know, you're taking these exams and they're very curated for specific scenarios. But one thing I would encourage you to do is just read how the real world is using MuleSoft, because it really was a reality check for me. And I really had to there was a learning curve because I didn't realize that academia didn't necessarily merge in with reality. So that's another thing I would encourage. And then last but not least, experience with the additional tools, version control, CI/CD, your REST clients, different languages, just getting a holistic view of how MuleSoft can interact with these different components would really help you. So that's pretty much my experience as far in the past 6 months that I've had since starting my new role. It's been about 1.5 years since I've taken the exam. We're prepping for the CMD2 now. So that's all I have.
That is great.
Questions or
That's great.
anything, just feel free to reach out at any time. I'm available.
Appreciate it so much, Shayna. And it's just exciting to see you grow and to see your career advance. So congratulations on your efforts. And a lot of that is many times it's, right here, it's right in our mind, to continue and progress and move forward and take ownership. And many times when we step into a role, it's bigger than we think we are. Well, of course, you're getting started. You're going to grow into that role and then proceed forward. So congratulations to you and thank you for the tips. I'm telling you, these are so valuable for those of you getting ready to sit for this exam. And definitely excited to help you do that. Let us know if you get stuck. Like she said, reach out. She'd be glad to answer questions you might have or any of that.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Shayna mentioned community. The IQ community is invitation only, but it is very generous with invitations. So all you got to do is ask, and you can come join our IQ community. There is a MuleSoft community that is soon, and not yet, but very soon going to have public access to the MuleSoft community Slack. And you can find all of us there and a bunch of other people who know lots. So if whenever that happens, we're going to make sure we make an announcement on LinkedIn is the way I usually do it. But finding a way to stay connected, that's what we mean by community, staying connected with a bunch of other people who are learning what you're learning. And in the meantime, our community right now, come join it. You can stay connected with Shayna and Diane and me and everyone else in here by doing that.
Yep. And going hand in hand with that, upcoming, we have some events that may be near you. I'm not sure, but one of the events that's coming up is Montreal Dreamin'. Integration Quest is a sponsor for this event. We'll be heavily active in presenting, workshops, things of that nature. Oh, that kind of slid down. So anyway, sorry, event theme needs to be up higher on that page, but nonetheless, let me see what happened with that one. I don't know if I can fix it fast enough. Let's see. But we would love for you to attend, to be part of that with us. There we go. It's all better now. I moved it from
the 200 looks like 2 attendees from MuleSoft, 0 admins.
Oops. It is 200 plus. That's the goal. So it does kind of look like that. I see it. But anyway, this will be in August. The night before this event, we're doing a 4 meetup group collaboration, all of that in celebration of Max's birthday. So if you can and have a passport or know people in that region or area, pass the word. We would love to have you be there with us. Another huge event coming up also is Dreamforce. Dreamforce is, of course, in San Francisco, September 17th through 19th. We will be there. Most of our group is being Ryan, myself, Shivani,
And
Audrey.
anyone else put in the chat. We'll be
And if
happy
you're
to- we'll
going,
definitely
yeah.
hook up there, yeah.
Yeah. What is in the chat, by the way? Yeah. So anyway, just let us know if you plan to go. And we have a discount, a percentage discount off that we'll be glad to get you for Dreamforce. That will, I think it's what, a 35% off, Ryan?
That's what's available. I don't know how long it's available. It's available now, though.
Yeah. So if you're interested,
But I mean, and then related to that, I'd love to present a challenge. Get your MCD MuleSoft certification by this date,
yeah,
by September 17th, and we'll celebrate you at Dreamforce. I'll buy you a beer or
absolutely.
something, or a tea or whatever you like.
Something more like dessert. We will buy you dessert, not a coffee or a tea, or beer. I don't like beer. I want dessert. We'll buy you the best chocolate dessert that or if you don't like chocolate. Anyway, we'll do something fun. Anyway, we would love to also let you know we got the RPA lab environment still available to get hands-on with RPA things. We'd love hearing your success stories.
Go back to RPA because it's an experiment we're running. We haven't had a lot of interest yet. And so, I don't know how long we're going to have it. We're trying to decide if we're going to renew it next year. So if if you don't have access to learn RPA, we have it for now. You can come use ours, or maybe people don't want it, and then we'll stop, because we got to pay for it. So, so we're going to get rid of it if nobody wants it.
And there's not a trial account to learn this. And I'm telling you this, RPA, also there is the intelligent document processing. There's many different components of this also, and you can't have trial accounts for those. So we brought it to you at a very affordable price. And reach out to us if you'd like to tap into this. It helps us, it helps you. We can collaborate on some ideas and use cases and help, build that out some. So as you know, we loved hearing about your success stories. Alan, we need to add you to this group also, because I know you and I have chatted about that. We'll discuss that further, because Alan in the room has got a great story to tell too. And would love to expose that. So we'll definitely get into that. Invite your friends. We'd love to have you as always. And to be mindful of our time, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you everyone for attending. We can do some QA and hang out, but I know some of you may be on your lunch hour and I wanted to kind of officially wrap a little early. So, or not early, but actually a little late, but we're wrapping. So thank you all so much for being here. Have a wonderful weekend. Be safe, and looking forward to seeing you at our next event. Okay. So anyone that wants to hang out and ask any questions, we can do that now.
After the recording goes off.
Okay, let me kill it. Thank you all for the recording is going to stop.